Welcome into the Fantasy Flow, a conversation flowing between the NFL and fantasy football. We are your hosts, Austin and Andy. Andy, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing all right. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. Played some poker. Won some poker. Very important.
Won some poker.
Yeah, won some poker.
I
Final
shouldn't sound too
tables.
surprised. I'm sorry. That might be a little offensive.
No, no, no. It's tough. Final tables in the morning session and in the evening session.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't do a whole lot this weekend. We're recording on June 11th, Tuesday. I say that because yesterday was a Monday, and on Monday I went and took my wife and my dog to the Mariners game. And it was the most boring game I'd ever been a part of until the last two innings. Came back from being down 4-0. Grand slam, walk-off in the bottom of the ninth to win the game.
Yeah,
That was
go
pretty
A's,
nice.
right?
Go A's.
That's my little dig at the Mariners. Yeah.
You're not a Mariners guy.
No, no, I'm not.
Oh, wow, okay.
No, I'm not really a baseball guy, so I like to dig at the Mariners and the local team and say go A's.
I
Even
mean
though
that.
to bring your dog to the baseball stadium, that's like, I mean, I would do that too, and I don't care who's playing.
Yeah, we got really lucky. There wasn't a whole lot of people around us. Other people, it looked kind of cramped, and I was like,
Mm.
this could go really wrong really fast if two dogs like looked at each other the wrong way. You know, it was like just a recipe for chaos. But
That's
it
my
was
hot
actually
dog, God damn it!
right. No, yeah, yeah. We saw some, someone's feeding their dog, and then all the other dogs were like, "What?"
Oh shit!
Yeah, yeah.
When the heck did we get hot dogs?
I actually saw a dog dressed as a hot dog. I appreciated that.
That's actually hilarious.
Anyways, so yeah, this episode we're gonna go through the NFC, talk about some storylines for the off season that have piqued our interest, and then take a look at some team win total over unders that were got us going.
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of a surprising line. Some eyebrow raisers that we saw. So, Andy, you want to go ahead and get us started with a off-season storyline you're excited to talk about?
Yes, yes, I can. Yeah. I'm going to highlight the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC West. We're both Seattle Seahawks fans, and I'm going to talk about one of their division rivals. Win total betting line is 8.5 wins. Right now, it's minus 135 on the over and plus 110 on the under. I'm not here to. I'm going to make my case, and then I'll just tell you at the very end.
Hmm.
So, obviously, they have a lot of big names coming into this year. They got Puka, star, now second year, now veteran wide receiver. Cooper Kupp, one of our favorites
Yeah.
from Eastern Washington. Kyron, they got Matthew Stafford at 36 years old coming
Going
into
strong.
his
Yeah.
15th season. I know. I wrote that down. I thought a first person I thought of was Tom Brady. It was like, wow, 5 more years and he's matching Tom Brady status. And
That's
then,
nuts. Yeah.
yeah, right. And then drafted Blake Corum in the NFL draft this year to help back up Kyron because as we saw, if Kyron goes down, that team plateaus, just going down.
Yeah, yeah, they drafted your boy, Blake Corum.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, our own division mate has to draft the guy that I think is not that great, and then and then Sean McVay is gonna turn him into like an all pro stud.
Right, right. He ran all over your favorite college team in
Yeah,
Ohio State, and now he's gonna run all over your favorite NFL team.
exactly. Yeah, probably will. Yeah,
But no,
exactly.
you make a great point because yeah, they literally, I think they was it last season they called Daryl Henderson like off the street, and they're like,
Yep.
you have to come take 15 carries like this week, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
as soon as Kyron Williams was healthy, they cut him again. It was just like, oh my god.
Such a dick move.
It really was, but yeah, no, they just didn't feel confident in anyone else in that running back room that they have. So, uh, yeah, no, it's a real opportunity as long as Kyron's healthy. Might not be the most fantasy relevant, but definitely an important off-season addition.
For sure, for sure. They're going to need somebody to help them out. And speaking about not having confidence in their running back room, remember how they had Cam Akers? Like I think he got traded like week 3 or 4 or something to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone was all hyped on Cam coming in, and Cam being the workhorse for that team, and then I mean, they weren't maybe hyped, but we all expected Cam to continue on with that role, and then sure enough, he gets traded, and Kyron just blasts off. It's like, Sean McVay's like, we know what we have, with Kyron.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah.
So, a really big storyline with the Rams as well is Aaron Donald retiring. I mean, as a Seahawks fan, NFC West fan, we're all very excited about that news. So that's going to be interesting to see how they move forward as a defensive unit. And they were a wild card team last year. They were in a rebuild mode, and they came back and made the playoffs, kind of just like the Seahawks did the year before. They won nine games again, and I see them as another wild card team. I don't see them overtaking the 49ers in this division, but I think they can hit their 9-win, maybe sneak in and get 10. But I mean, I think they can just repeat what they did last year. I looked up Matthew Stafford, and he played 15 games, and he was middle of the pack. The league that I used scoring rankings, he was 15th that I saw. So he just played average, and the year before he got hurt and only played a handful of games. But that very first year with the Rams, he was the 5th best quarterback. He was a top 5 quarterback. So he doesn't need to get back to there, but fantasy quarterback. But if he can get back to top 6, maybe even top 8 fantasy relevant quarterback, I think they can get 9 wins. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Over the last few years, I mean, they won the Super Bowl. What was
Yeah.
that, 2 or 3 years ago? It's like over the last few years, we've seen their ceiling, and I feel like we might have seen their floor. I know Aaron Donald just retired, but he was kind of on his way out anyways. They replaced him with a couple of really nice teammates on the Florida State defensive line, and yeah, I mean, if that's their floor, is like 9-8, 8-9, because I just think Sean McVay and his brilliant schematics and his coaching, it just makes up for so much. And good drafting too, but like those good drafts, like those really nice picks in the later rounds, those are made to look like amazing picks because of the scheme.
Yes.
So it's just a perfect marriage of like, okay, we have this scheme. We only need this guy to be good at these 2 things, and like the scheme and the play design will take care of the rest. And they find those guys in the later rounds. And yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. What did you say the win total was at again?
8.5.
Yeah. So, I mean, case you're making, it's kind of like that's around their floor. Like, if Matthew Stafford is just average, they're right there. And if he's anything more than that, then they easily clear that bar.
Right.
And I remember there was like some built-in sort of fear around the whole Rams because people were thinking Matthew Stafford was going to retire. They were thinking, oh, he's not really healthy. I don't know how true that is anymore. It seems like he was healthy all last season, and now he's going to have a whole off season to get right. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I think that's interesting.
yeah, and they brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. Not that that's super
I
impressive
forgot
or
about
anything,
that.
but yeah, right. I mean, they have extra insurance in case Stafford does get hurt or decides that this is his last year or whatever it may be, right? But yeah, like you just said, if Matthew Stafford can just get the ball to all those names I just mentioned and just be average, and they do the rest, I don't see how they can just win another 9 games. Okay?
So obviously the top two wide receivers, Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua. And then it was kind of like last year they were trying to figure out, okay, who's that wide receiver 3? And that wide receiver 3 historically has been valuable for fantasy. They throw the ball around a lot, and that wide receiver 3 is getting work. At the beginning of the year, they thought it was Tutu Atwell, the littlest receiver in the league. Eventually, they made a switch from him to a guy named Demarcus Robinson, who's kind of bounced around the league. He's always been, in my opinion, very underrated. And in that role, in that system, he did amazing things as the number 3. He sometimes outproduced whichever one of those top 2 guys. It just wasn't their week. Sometimes Robinson would get that touchdown. And so they brought him back, which I think is a good sign. He's still 29 in his prime, and he's just a solid veteran, been around the league, knows exactly what to do. And then near the end of the draft, in the 6th round, the Rams took a guy named Jordan Whittington. He played at Texas, and I, like everyone else, had no idea who he was until the college football playoff game against the Huskies. Which I'm sure you watched that game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't A.D. Mitchell who was carving up the Huskies. It wasn't Xavier Worthy. It was their 3rd guy. And, he probably benefited from those guys taking away some coverage.
Sure.
But this guy, Jordan Whittington, was doing work. So I did kind of a deep dive. And, yeah, his college career has just been one injury after another. And then he transferred schools, and he just never really found his groove. But he has been, like, an elite prospect the whole time. So I think he's a super interesting name that they added in the 6th round. And maybe not this year, maybe next year, maybe this is more of a dynasty nugget. That's the fantasy flow. We're just kind of going all around the place. But
Right.
Jordan Whittington's a super interesting name. And yeah, I'm curious to see what he does on the field too.
Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, how much longer is Cooper? As much as we love Cooper Cup, how much longer is he going to be able to perform at a top tier level? I mean, he's just getting hurt left and right. I mean, one thing after another with this guy, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, drafting some low risk, high reward type of wide receiver like that, especially coming from Texas. I mean, my eyes lit up when you said Texas. I mean, they had a killer offense last year, so.
Yeah. I mean, he was on the field a lot. He just
Exactly.
a little overshadowed by those first round talents around him.
Right.
But and then another addition the Rams made is at tight end. They took with the Seahawks tight end Colby Parkinson. He's just a giant oak tree of a man. He's 6'7", 265, and he's got the long flowing sort of like Jesus haircut.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really excited to see what he does because Tyler Higbee's not going to be healthy to start the year. So
Right. Another guy with not long flowing hair.
yeah.
And that, the Rams have from what the research I saw, they have at least a top 10, if not better, offensive line. So I mean, if that offensive line can stay together as a unit, healthy, for the better part of the year, I mean, I don't see. Like I said, I think this team is going to be at least a 9-win team.
Yeah, I trust Sean McVay. I think he makes up for a lot of weaknesses that other people would look at and poke holes in and say, oh, well, they're not really well-rounded. Their roster's missing this and that. It's like, well, on a Sean McVay team, that doesn't mean as much as you think it does. So I think that's super interesting. And yeah, this offseason is going to be one to watch for them. Is Puka becoming the one, or is Cooper Kupp totally healthy and he's ready to repeat his dominant season from a few years ago?
Right.
And who is that wide receiver 3 going to be? That's all super important for fantasy, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about the Rams. Enough about the Rams. What do you got?
Sure, yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm staying in the NFC West too, but it's not our Seahawks. I'm talking about the Cardinals. Because in the draft this year, they took my favorite wide receiver in this class, the wide receiver I thought was number 1, and the running back that I had as my number one running back in the draft. So Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey Benson.
Yep.
So I am just so perplexed on what to do and how to really think about this Cardinals team because we totally just dismissed them last year as
Hmm.
like, oh, they're going to be a bottom dweller. That's going to be a team to avoid. Maybe, look at some ADP, maybe Trey McBride. I don't know. But then going into this year, suddenly this is a team that's super interesting at all positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. They're incredibly interesting and enticing for fantasy football specifically. We know the defense is still has a long ways to go, and that can be even better for fantasy football in terms of
Yep.
the offensive players. So yeah, I'm looking at Kyler Murray, who is now has a whole offseason to get healthy, get right. He's a dual threat quarterback. Trey McBride's entering his prime. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll talk about him a little bit more. And then I want to focus on the running backs with James Conner and the recently added Trey Benson. I got a
Yeah.
stat for you that I
Go
think I
for it.
shared earlier. The Cardinals led the league with 3.1 yards per carry before contact. So, of the whole NFL, the
Wow.
Cardinals as a team, their ball carriers went 3.1 yards, which is the most in the entire league, before even getting touched. So I don't know if that's scheme or if that's O line, but I
Mm.
think it's one of those because it's not just James Conner. Like Amari DiMercato was seeing similar success before contact. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And we
Yeah.
don't even think of the Cardinals as having like a great offensive line or like a Sean
Right.
McVay, like, super revolutionary offensive mind, but the
Hmm.
Cardinals were getting push, whatever that means. And I think that's super interesting for fantasy football. And James Conner also, and this is a running back specific stat, James Conner led the league in rushes of 20 plus yards.
Oh my gosh. I was gonna say, how did he finish last year?
I don't have that off the dome, but he he beat his ADP. I can tell you
Yeah.
that.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and he stayed healthy most of the year. I think James Conner is a guarantee to miss a couple games. Maybe you could pull that up while I'm talking
Yeah.
his fantasy finish. But yeah, I'm just gonna be watching this backfield throughout the offseason because if this is James Conner's backfield and Trey Benson kind of pays his dues as the backup his rookie year, I'm gonna be totally in on James Conner for redraft this year. And if it's a running back by committee, well then Trey Benson becomes a little interesting because I was way high on Trey Benson, and so were a lot of other people, a lot of other scouts that I respect were super high on Trey Benson. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's a super interesting stat about the yards before contact, and I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on what's coming out of training camp and those rumors around the Cardinals' backfield.
He played 13 games in 2022, in 22, and in 23. He was the 20th ranked running back in 22 and the 18th in 23. Last year, he had over 1,000 yards, 1,040, 5 yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns with 27 catches. So I personally don't think he's going anywhere. Yes, he's going to miss those 3 to 4 games this year, and Trey Benson's going to come in and probably do a really good job, especially after the stat you just said. I don't see how they take an instant decline from running running before contact, but I think this is still James Conner's backfield. I don't see. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you really want to take a flyer on Trey Benson on a redraft late round, probably not even being drafted, to be honest. But this is James Conner's team until proven otherwise, and I don't think that's going to happen this coming year. I don't think he's going to be proven otherwise this year.
yeah, no, I think we'll definitely keep our ear to the ground and see what's coming out of training camp there, because all these rookies are going to be hyped up, right? Like over the course of the summer, oh, these rookies are looking so good. They're ahead of schedule.
Always
They're this, they're
happens.
that.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that could be like a sneaky sort of my guy for me. Like because the Seahawks they drafted Zach Charbonnet in the second round. Trey Benson, I think he was the first pick of the third round.
Yep. Yep.
So like there's precedent for teams drafting a running back relatively high and just letting them sit and develop and be the change of pace
Mm-hmm.
when there's a guy like 5 yards a carry. Nobody talks about James Conner in that with that sort of reverence, but like maybe we should. I don't know.
No,
And
I
like
agree.
you were saying, his fantasy finish wasn't that good, but it's just the touchdowns weren't there because the offense wasn't moving.
Yeah.
Because that's the case that I would make, right? Like having Kyler Murray for a whole season,
Yeah.
add in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think the offense is going to move more. And I think he could see more touchdowns.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, no Kyler Murray for the first half of the year. The defense gave up a lot of points and they were probably often playing behind. So yeah, the touchdowns probably weren't there for James Conner, and he's going to miss a couple games. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he can only go up, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of time spent on the Cardinals. I don't need to really dive into Marvin Harrison Jr., but his ADP right now is it's unprecedented. It's the highest we've ever seen a rookie wide receiver's ADP in redraft. He's currently like the 15th player off the board or something like that on Sleeper.
Unreal.
It is
Unreal.
unreal, but then you think about it and you're like, man, there's a lot of reasons to like him too. There's kind of like a sneaky amount of vacated targets with the Cardinals. Hollywood Brown's gone, Rondale Moore's gone. That's 30%. That's 30% of the passing market share right there. So yeah, lots of vacated targets. For those of you who don't know what that means, that's like talking about pass catchers who left the team this offseason. They were targeted on 40% of last year's throws for the Cardinals. So that means there's 40% vacated targets. So he's
Yeah.
stepping into that role. Not alone, obviously. They've made a couple other minor additions, but he's
Yeah.
going to be the guy from day one, is what it sounds like. And I'm going to be listening to that all off season too. What's just hype, what's real, how are they designing the offense, how's he looking, stuff like that.
Remember when Jamar Chase got drafted,
Mm.
and was during his training camp or rookie mini camp, and a bunch of reports, oh, he's dropping a lot of passes, oh, he's not NFL ready, and then just comes out and lights up the stage. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better entry into the NFL with his rookie year. Him and Joe Burrow were also teammates though.
That's true. Yep. That's good to
So
remember. But yeah, yeah, I don't want to already throw Marvin Harrison Jr. in with like those elite fantasy producers, right? But like it's at the same time, it isn't just Jamar Chase. We've seen multiple rookie wide receivers come in. Like you just mentioned Puka Nakua.
true.
Like he'd never met Matthew Stafford before in his life, and
True.
he set all the records, and Justin Jefferson's over there doing his thing. So it just seems like modern times these rookie wide receivers can surprise us, but unlike James Conner, there's no discount. You're not
Hmm.
you're not trying to like outfox your other managers. It's like you have to spend one of your first two picks to get him. So
Yes.
you need
Yeah.
to be all in. You need to
Yeah.
just totally
He
call your
has
shot.
to. You're projecting Marvin Harrison at that price. You're projecting him to be a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, yeah. You could argue that you would need to draft him at his ceiling,
Hmm.
which I don't
Exactly.
love. But
Exactly.
like I said, yeah, all those vacated targets and Kyler for a whole season. There's a
I
lot
mean,
to like.
that's why the price is so high. But
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So
this
yeah,
game is a risk versus fantasy football is a risk versus reward, and that sounds like a lot of risk for a mild reward.
anyways, I think that does it for storylines.
Yeah, yeah.
How about I toss it to you for a over under that's got your attention?
I'm gonna go with the Washington Commanders. They have a 6.5 win total from Vegas. and I'm going to choose the under on the Washington Commanders. I don't think they will. I think they will win 6 games or less, and that bet right now is at plus 100.
Mm-hmm.
So, some reasons why is I looked up multiple sources of their O line ranking, and I know that's a difficult unit to rank, especially during the offseason, but they averaged to be the 31st offensive line going into this offseason after the draft from all
Gotcha,
these
gotcha.
different sources. So they have a terrible O line, which, as we both know, matters a ton. Winning in the trenches is a must if you want to succeed. They have a rookie quarterback. They have a new head coach. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive coordinator. Um, it's a lot of things that need to hit right, and only one or two things has to go wrong, and they're already in a tough spot. So one or two things doesn't work out really well, and they're just going to be stuck in that rough spot. I mean, they need to have a lot of things go well. Yes, Cliff Kingsbury is coming in as the new OC, and we saw what he could do with Arizona that very first year. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a great fantasy quarterback. Do I think he's going to be a great winning NFL quarterback? No, not this first year.
Not in his rookie year. Yeah, I was gonna ask how you feel about Jaden Daniels just as a prospect.
Fantasy wise, or as a prospect?
No, no, just do you think he'll be successful in the league?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's a lot of situation stuff, right? Like, I thought Justin Fields was going to succeed in the league. How can this guy not? He's fast. He can pass. He's decisive, and that didn't work out. So, if I had to guess right now with his current situation, no, I don't. I don't think he's going to succeed. I think he's going to be flashy this year, maybe next year, but I could easily see a Justin Fields esque downfall, which is crappy to say, but it's all about, a lot of it has to do with your situation, and I think more and more of us are becoming keeping that in
Yeah.
our mind as these teams draft these young top 5 picks in the NFL draft.
Well, I mean, look, Justin Fields didn't have a good O line either, so
Exactly.
that's super tough. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just like, are you accurate, and are you a good decision maker, or are you not?
Yeah.
And I mean, I really like Jaden Daniels, but shout out to our AFC episode where you went under on the Patriots. That was you, right? You went
Yeah.
under? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We both agreed on it. That's why I get confused. But
Yeah.
yeah, going under on the Patriots. I know neither one of us are big fans of Drake May, and I was totally on board with that pick going under on the Patriots. I am a Jaden Daniels fan, but I'm still in lockstep with you on this under for the Commanders, just because it all needs to come together so perfectly in year one. To ask them to win 7 games this year, it just seems like way too much to ask. And you're getting even money for the pick, so I totally love that.
Yeah. And yeah, just my last note on Jane Daniels. I think he'll, because of the bad O line, because of the Cliff Kingsbury system, I think he'll be running all over the yard. I think he'll be getting a bunch of running yards this year. That's great for fantasy, but not for wins.
Sure. Yep. Totally. Um, if we're ready to move on to my first over/under, I'm gonna just stay right there in that division in the
Go for it.
NFC East. I know the NFC East doesn't get a whole lot of love, like no one really talks about them, not very popular. Sarcasm. But let's talk about the Giants.
I was gonna say, what NFC East are you talking about?
The New York Giants are booked for over under of 6.5, just like the Commanders. Uh, I'm gonna go under on the Giants too, but that one is minus 130, so you're not getting as good of a value there for that pick. But let me tell you why I'm even more confident in the Giants going under that number. Last year they went 6-11, so you would have hit it last year. And let me tell you, the 6 wins that the Giants managed
Okay.
last year, it was against the Cardinals without Kyler Murray. So one of the worst teams in the league without their best
With jo-
player.
yeah, Josh Dobbs. Yep.
Patriots, Commanders twice. They beat the Packers on a last-second field goal, and
Oh.
they won the turnover battle there pretty significantly, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
And then their last win was against the nose-diving Eagles in Week 18, where Marcus Mariota played most of the game. So
Oh
they,
yeah, that was that last game. I remember. Oh man, that was so stupid. I couldn't believe that the Eagles lost that game. I remember that.
I think all three of their quarterbacks contributed to those 6 wins. I think the first one was Daniel Jones, and then
Mm,
Tommy DeVito got a few, and then Tyrod Taylor won that Week 18 game. It was nutty.
yeah.
It was totally nutty, and they ended up beating those teams to get 6 wins, and now they're over unders at 6.5. So they have to improve upon that. And you might be thinking, well, what if Daniel Jones is healthy for the whole year?
Mm-hmm.
Let me throw some Daniel Jones numbers at you. So
Okay. Okay.
he had 5 starts. He got hurt in his 6th start at the very beginning. I'm throwing that one out. So in
Mm-hmm.
those 5 games he played, he threw. Do you have a guess how many passing touchdowns in those
3.
5 games?
I'm gonna guess 3.
In 5 games,
Mm-hmm.
2.
I was generous.
Yeah, no. He had 2
Oh.
passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions in those 5
Oh.
games.
They. I bet they were both to Saquon. Oh my gosh.
He averaged 177 passing yards per game, and yeah, I don't have it all in front of me, but I know they got absolutely blanked in their first game. They put up a goose egg as an offense.
Yes. Yeah, that was against Dallas. It was like
Week 1, yeah,
40 to
yeah.
0 or something like that.
Yeah, so that's with a whole off season. That's, everyone healthy. You're all there lined up. You got Saquon Barkley in the backfield.
Oh God.
And yeah, so then this off season, just lost Darren Waller. He retired officially.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
more importantly, they lost Saquon Barkley. They replacing him
Mhm.
with Devin Singletary, which,
No
I,
comparison.
I have I have no real strong take on Devin Singletary, but he's no Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so you're just asking a lot of this team, and I'll throw one more stat out there for you, why that 6 wins from last year is not repeatable. The Giants tied the Ravens for the most forced turnovers of any defense in the league in 2023.
What?
Yeah, the Giants defense was doing work. They forced
That's
more
crazy.
turnovers than any other team. They tied the Ravens to lead the league. And as a team, even despite all of the turnovers that the offense had, the Giants were tied with the Ravens for the best turnover differential through the
Wow.
regular season.
Wow. I mean, I
But
know they lost. Yeah, that's crazy. I know they got Brian Burns this year, and they lost Xavier McKinney, which yeah. But man, I mean, that's crazy. That's. It's gonna be more
like
fun to just watch that one side of the team.
so turnovers, like for those of you listening, I know Andy knows this, but like for everyone listening, like turnovers as a defense, like that's not a sticky stat. Like
Mm-mm.
you have good players, you have bad players, but like ultimately, it's a weird shaped ball, and it bounces one way or it bounces this way. Either recover the fumble or the other team recovers the fumble. Like it's kind of
Hmm.
fluky to be honest, and
Yeah,
all the balls bounced their way last year. No team had a better turnover differential than them, and they only won 6 games.
that's that's insane.
Yeah.
That's like hitting all. That's like hitting 70% of your 3 pointers as an NBA team and still losing.
Yeah. No, that is a good comp because like there's some skill involved, but we also know that there's some luck, right? Like the best
Hmm.
the best 3-point shooters make what 40%. Like it's
Yeah.
you know it there's a huge element of just luck and they had a lot of luck last year to
That
go
is such an
6-11.
important. That is a crazy stat, Austin. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm still flabbergasted by that. Because
I'm glad you
getting,
liked it, Andy. Yeah.
oh yeah, getting turnovers as a defensive unit is massive. It allows your team to succeed further and further throughout that game and throughout the year because I'm as a unit I'm capable of getting the ball out of my opponent's hands and giving it to my offense
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to just have their offense be so flat and do nothing with it is so demoralizing as a fan, as a
Oh my
defensive
God, I
player.
know.
Oh my gosh. So, yes, you're right. It's not sticky, and it's super disappointing to hear that they had the best turnover ratio and they only won 6 games with three
Yeah.
different quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like Tommy DeVito was put in positions to succeed. Like they hung around in games longer than they should have because of just those turnovers that the defense kept forcing. And you mentioned Brian Burns. That's important to throw in there. Yeah, they have improved on the defensive line, but I think they've what's the opposite of improve? They've declined in the secondary.
Yes, tremendously. Yeah.
So they're gonna need to force a ton of pressure, to force some errant balls, just to hope some of those mid-round picks that they've thrown at the secondary hit this year. So that's it. That's all I got for the Giants.
Okay, before we move on,
Yeah,
who if both teams, the Commanders and the Giants, have 6.5 win totals,
I
and
thought
we're
about
both
this.
saying the under,
I know.
who's gonna get fourth place in the division? Who's gonna be the worst team?
I still think it's the Commanders.
I think
I
it's the
know.
Commanders too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I said I was more confident in my pick, uh, but the Giants did beat the Commanders twice last year. And they have
And
some continuity with the quarterback and the coaches. I think their
right,
floor is a little higher than just all of the unknowns in
exactly.
Washington.
I agree. And they had Sam Howell last year throwing in it over 4,000 yards.
Yeah, yeah, their defense was really bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there was a little bit of like Jameis Winston, I forget whatever season that was, but it's like when you throw
Oh
an
yeah.
interception or you throw a pick six or something, you turn the ball over, they score, you get
Yep.
the ball right back, so you can kind of pad your
Yeah.
stats that way. Man, yeah, I love Sam Howell. I love Jameis Winston too, but that's because we play a lot of fantasy football. So
Yeah. No, that was a good comp.
yeah, yeah. No,
I am going to talk. I'm going to move to the NFC North, and I am going to talk about the Chicago Bears.
alrighty.
Their win total is 8.5. Vegas has them at 8.5 wins, and I'm going to be spicy here and pick the under. Everyone is
Ooh.
all about the Bears this year. Number one draft pick, Caleb Williams, got rid of Justin Fields, Romo Dunze, trading for Keenan Allen. I mean, this is the side of the Bears that we have never getting DeAndre Swift in free agency. We have never seen this side of the Bears going crazy in the offseason.
On the offensive side too, it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
like so. This is super interesting. Tell me why you hate Caleb Williams.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. I hate that guy. USC, right? So I think they have. I'm gonna kind of go down the same line as I did with Washington. They have the middle of the road offensive line, so you got to win in the trenches. And they have an average offensive line, so nothing crazy. They have a lot of different pieces, and again, the same argument, new pieces on offense. These are all players. There's one returning star player on that team, and it's DJ Moore. Like, I don't see how all these new ideas, all these new, even if they're all talented, like, how are you going to fit, how are you going to scheme all these new personalities, new talents, new skills, and mash them together and win 9 games and become a wild card team year one? I don't see that happening. They have Shane Waldron coming in as the OC. We've seen that firsthand as a Seahawks, right? Like,
Yeah.
the head coach, we're not big, you and me are not big fans of that head coach. Things could go really poorly really quickly, and Eberflus gets kicked, gets the can within 5-6 weeks.
I wonder if that's like the only reason why they kept him was just so that they can fire him this year, so they have someone to fire. I don't know.
Right.
But
Maybe. That's a good point.
I don't know. But yeah, everyone talks about Caleb Williams being the greatest prospect, and this situation being a great situation because they are kind of stacked on the defensive side. And then they went out and they added Keenan Allen on the offensive side, and then they drafted Rome Odunze. So it is a great situation, but that line is just being driven up by this hype machine that started as soon as the Super Bowl ended. You know, people wanted to talk about Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So to ask them to have a winning season in year one, it just feels like you're setting the bar too high for a team that we all agree is probably going to be good, but like, you know, relatively good. But
Yeah. Yeah. And they have a tough division. I mean, yes, their defense is good. Their defense.
suddenly, yeah.
Yeah, we saw their defense really show some strong flashes there at the end of last year. They have a tough few. So I'll read off their first 5 games. It's Titans, Texans, Rams, Patriots, and oh, sorry, no, Titans, Texans, Rams, Panthers, Jaguars. So out of those first 5, they can probably win 3.
I think that, yeah, I was going to say they're probably going to be favored in 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah. So it's not so much so I know I just said the season could go really downhill really quickly, but honestly, with their beginning of their schedule, I see their beginning of the season going like they probably have a winning record. They're probably 5-3 at the end of 8 weeks, and then their end of their season, I think they lose pretty much all their games except for one. Their last couple games are a lot of divisional games. Packers, Vikings, Lions, San Francisco, Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, Packers.
Yeah, I think that's really important to remember. Like, it's honestly similar to like when we're talking about the Seahawks or the Rams. It's like you can get excited about these teams, but are you going to put them ahead of the 49ers?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
if you're talking about the Seahawks, it's like, okay, are you ready to put them ahead of the Rams? Yeah, when you start talking about the rest of their division up there in the North, it's like, yeah, they've got a squad. They've put together a bunch of names. We'll see how it works. Like, are you really ready to put them ahead of Jordan Love and the Packers?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not ready to put. I still think they're the third. They're the third best team. I mean, yes, they'll probably surpass Minnesota this year, and be the third best. But I don't think they're the second or the first best in that division.
Yeah, I totally agree. And chances are they probably like split with Minnesota. So I don't know. I think it's a good take. I think it's an interesting take because everyone seems to be on the Bears hype train right now.
Right.
But yeah, I think that over under win total is just unfortunately a little too eager in year one.
Right. And because it's the hype train, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. There, you get plus 140 for picking the under right now.
No way.
Yeah, pretty because the hype train is like you just said.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's worth it.
Exactly.
I mean, not that we would ever sports bet because that's illegal in Washington State, but you know, for those listening in Tennessee or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
that's a very interesting nugget, Andy.
Yeah, right.
You know, speaking of the NFC North and the Green Bay Packers, I was intrigued by where their line was set. Their line was set at 9.5 wins, and if you wanted to go over 9.5, that is minus 130.
Okay, not bad.
So to me, what that says is that Vegas kind of wanted to put it at 10.5. But they're like, Man, I don't know. Like, no one's gonna bet on over 10.5, so they put it at 9.5, but then they gave you that minus 130. Um, and I'll tell you why that line really jumped out at me is because they went 9-8 last year. So basically, right there, they
Hmm.
snuck into the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, they hung 48 points on the Cowboys in the wild card round.
Yeah, that game was crazy.
Jordan Love had a 76% completion percentage
Oh
in
my,
that game.
oh my God.
3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, it
Yeah,
was a clinic.
yeah, that game was over by halftime.
It was insane, and I think they won a couple games near the end of the regular season to even like get to that point. Like
Yes, yeah.
it just felt, and because it was Jordan Love's first year as a starter, it just really felt like they figured something out, in the process of that regular season, and by the end
Hmm.
of that regular season, they were a well-oiled machine. And I also want to throw in there they were the league's youngest offense. People talked about that a lot last offseason
Mm.
going in. They're like, oh my goodness, all these wide receivers, they're either rookies or they're in their second year, and same for the tight
Right,
ends. And yeah,
right.
no one really knew how it was going to go, but by the end of the season, they'd really figured something out.
Hmm.
So I think that if they start next year, if they kind of pick up where they left off, this is definitely a double-digit win team. Any initial
Yeah.
thoughts on that over under and where they have that line set?
I mean, based off what I just said with the Bears, I'm inclined to agree with you. The thing we have to remember though is, on average, half of the teams that made the playoffs last year don't make the playoffs the following year. So we're saying the Rams are good. We're saying the Bears and the Washington and the Giants are not going to hit their win totals. But we're saying the Packers, and now essentially we're saying the Lions are going to hit theirs and still win the division. I wonder where something has to give, right? I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you that I think they're still the second best team in their division, but it is a tough division. They're gonna be beating on each other. They got Josh Jacobs, which I think is an upgrade from Aaron Jones in one sense, but at the same time, Aaron Jones was super efficient.
Yeah, I don't. That feels like a lateral move. Like he's younger, and so contractually, it makes more sense. I don't think on field, Josh Jacobs is
True,
going to be better than Aaron Jones was. But
true.
yeah, I think the Packers have a chance. If Jordan Loves takes another step, I think they could be the best team in this division. Like who's to say the Lions
Mm,
don't take a step backward? Like we just don't know. I feel like in terms of the range of outcomes, 9.5 wins, that sort of represents their floor to me. That this young team doesn't actually take another step forward, that they plateau. I
yeah,
just think with all these players entering their prime and another year in the system, Jordan Love
right.
is the starter for another off season, and he now has something to build off of. Um, yeah, I don't know. I really like that line. So
Yeah, yeah, I do too. It really makes you think. It's funny because they don't really have a star name at the wide receiver position. We see their own division mate, the Vikings, pay Justin
mm,
Jefferson the bag, right? And I mean, the Lions have again another wide receiver that they
yep,
just paid the bag. The Bears,
yep.
big name, and I'm like, the more you bring it up, I'm inclined to agree with you that this team could easily make that extra step and be the best team in the division without a star name wide receiver. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah.
that's what's so funny about it, so crazy about it.
There were some total Jags catching touchdown passes in
Oh
big
yeah,
games at the end of the year, like Bo Melton and Malik Heath and just like all these other names that you're just like, how is this happening? I guess it's all Jordan
exactly.
Love. You're just like, I
Yeah,
don't know, I don't know. But yeah, it's crazy. I have one more little nugget to throw
go
out
for
there.
it.
It's mostly just for fun, but I just want to give a shout out to this guy, Keyshawn Nixon. He's the Packers DB and primary kick returner. The last 2 years, he led the league in kick return yards, and he was a first team All Pro
Oh damn,
both of the last years as a kick returner.
damn.
And he's just a total stud. He helped me win my IDP Dynasty League, so I feel like I felt the need to give him a shout out.
Sure,
I'm a
sure.
big fan of what he does in the return game, and they're changing the kickoff rules this year
Yeah,
to make it so that every team is now actually returning the kickoff with consistency. I think the Packers will benefit from that rule more than some other teams.
I agree. I agree. I think they have a really an all-star punter too, if I remember correctly. So that will
Packers
help.
fans will tell you that Keyshawn Nixon is actually a bad DB, that he sucks in coverage. But
He's
we're
really good at kick returns.
he's an amazing kick returner, you guys. And for IDP fantasy, he's a rock star. So,
Right, right. I hear you. No,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. If everyone stays healthy, he shouldn't have to play a whole lot on defense. But yeah, no.
Yeah, who's to say I mean, I know the Lions got star power and there's a lot of hype around them, but we haven't seen that type of consistency off of the Lions where we have seen that type of success and consistency with the Packers. I mean, they come so it's hard to trust the Lions in that sense. So, yeah, I can agree with you there.
I'm just saying you never know. I mean, we both love the Lions. I love what they're doing. They've been going just up and up and up and up every
Yeah, I
year.
love them too. Yeah.
But like we talked about the Bills on a previous episode. It's like just because it seems like they're going to take that next step to go into like the Super Bowl conversation, it's like that doesn't always happen. Maybe they
Yep.
like the Bills won just 10 games last year. That could be the Lions this year. Like we don't know. We don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree. That's a good point.
Alrighty. Well, did you have anything else to add for before we get out of here?
No, no, I think that's it. I think we covered it all.
I think next episode we're going to talk a little bit about a kind of fantasy football that Andy and I are both a big fan of. It's called guillotine leagues, and we're going to just kind of try and break down what that means to all the listeners who aren't familiar. We're going to tell you why it's better than your league, and we're going to hopefully convince you guys to start one of your own. And
Yes.
yeah, just some more fun fantasy content this off season. It might be a little far and few between as we continue into the sort of dead zone of NFL news and whatnot, but we're gonna hit it hard once the season starts, and
Yes.
be on the lookout for our Guillotine League episode.
Yes. I think that sounds like a great plan. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a ton for making it to the end of the episode. You're a real one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a free, easy way to support the show, and it really helps us out. And leave us your comments down below if you're on YouTube, or send in your questions at thefantasyflowpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.